Okay, so layout was the first piece of the puzzle for the fenders. Clamped up that board against the fender and started drawing the fenders on there. I'm going to use 1-inch, 1/8-inch square tubing for the frame of the fender. And right here, I'm just pulling the measurements off that actual drawing for my cuts. And once the design's set and I know what I'm doing, I'm just going to cut all the pieces all the way through and for each fender. And then this material had quite a bit of mill scale on it. I thought I could just clean it off with some acetone at this point, is what I was doing. I wound up doing what I should have done from the beginning. It's just using a scrubbing wheel and the grinder and grinding it off. So with the chop saw previously, I just cut rough links for all the measurements. And here on the miter saw, I'm gonna cut the actual links with the correct angles. And I just put this 7-inch abrasive wheel on this regular woodworking miter saw and had to put that board on there to raise it up on the platform so that little wheel would actually cut through all of the material. From here, it's just rinse and repeat. Cut all of the metal for each of the fenders and then clean up the edges. And here we're tacking together the first side of one of the fenders. And then we'll see how it looks on the actual trailer back there, make any adjustments until I was pleased with it, and then tack it together, weld it together fully, clean it up, and we'll be using that as the guide to build the other 3 pieces. And you'll see how that goes together in just a second. So what I thought would be the quickest method for making 4 symmetrical pieces was to use that first one as a jig. Basically put it down on this piece of wood and block up on each section that's an individual piece of metal, so that I can build it 1 piece at a time and hopefully come out with 4 that are all the same. It came out pretty close. It wasn't perfect, of course, but I was able to work with it to start framing out the fenders. And so here we're just making the other 3 sides using that jig. As an aside, using this MIG welder was a game changer. That was so easy. Wasn't pulling metal like I did with the arc welder. So that was a treat to use. I like both, but man, it makes it easy. So now I'm in my little shop, just trying to contain the dust and metal filings as much as I can while I clean up these pieces. And it is nice to get off the floor for a minute as well. So it's tight in here, but it works pretty well. I've kind of made it work for what I need. And this is framing up the actual fenders as they're going to be. So I've got, those are 2 of the sides we were just making, and then the pieces in the middle. So basically making a skeleton for the fender that I'll then cover in some 16 gauge sheet metal. And as you do on each step, just trying to take my time at the beginning of each step before I start tacking it to make sure it's right, it's working like I want it to, and it's going to work down the line when I go to put it on the trailer. UPS showed up with some more pieces for the trailer at that point, so that was always fun. Now each of the cross bracings go in. Should be 2 at the bottom and then 4 at each joint. And then I decided to put 1 in the center there because I will be climbing and stepping all over this. So just tacking, using that cross pattern, going from one side to the other, the top to the bottom, and fully welding it up. And now we do the second fender. All right, what UPS had brought was this Bulldog jack. So now the trailer was going to be able to stand on its own. And then I bought the jack without the mounts on it so that I can weld the mount where I wanted once I decided where to put it. And I went with the round rather than the square, you can see, because the idea was that I'd be able to just pull the pin, rotate it in place. And that's how this one worked on the front. The ones on the back that come in down the road so I can lift the whole trailer off the ground, those wound up, I can't really rotate them, but now at least all 3 jacks could fit on any side if one breaks or if I need to move it around. Tacked that mount on the trailer with the MIG, and then I wound up welding it with the MIG here, and it didn't, that's a 110 MIG and it's not enough. So the welds are fine on that. I was actually happy with the welds to the jack, but on the trailer I wound up grinding and cutting that out and then actually welding it with the 7018 arc welder. Did much better job. And here's the rest of the trailer. Have the fender skeletons resting in place. I should have been thinking about a bolt-on solution for them at this point, but I was all in with welding them on, so I once again caused myself problems down the road, but there they are. Overbuilt, I'm sure, just like everything else. All right, so now it's time to put the 16 gauge metal to basically skin the skeleton of the fender. I laid a piece of scrap 1/4 inch wood under the metal and used the 1x3 as a straight edge, and just a skill saw with an abrasive blade did pretty well for what I needed to do. I kept opening and closing the garage door to keep the shavings inside and the noise kind of quiet to help out the neighbors. Try to do that when I can while still moving forward. Now it was time to skin the top of the fender, which involved those, 4 bends. And at first I thought I needed to use heat. So I went over to my dad's shop with the oxyacetylene torch so we could use the heat to bend the metal. The second one, I didn't do that and it came out much better. That heat just warped the metal too much. Oh, and please don't judge me on the shorts and flip-flops. We're in the South in the middle of summer. It's 100 and something degrees outside and humid. It's hard to work in full protective gear, and I don't mind the little burns and cuts that come with it. It's hot sometimes. So while I was over there with the oxyacetylene torch, I was making some little pieces out of 1/2 inch bar to be my handles and chain, the spot on the trailer to mount the chains. So just kind of using it, forging out that metal a little bit. I had planned on having one handle on the top of the tongue of the trailer so I could pick it up and have a spot to move the trailer around. And then the trailer's a little bit heavy. I can deadlift it, but it's pretty heavy the way it came out. And then 2 chain mounts on the side. So that's just, like I said, forging these pieces out so I'll later on stick weld them to the trailer. So now we need to finish skinning that first fender, and the metal was warping too much with that heat, so we just cut it at the top and I put a separate piece, kind of scabbed it in and welded it up. The second one was one contiguous piece that I didn't use heat. I just tacked the piece in place and used force to push it around the bend and then tack it there and work my way around the fender, and they came out much better. So I've done a few small things adding to the trailer, just kind of off camera. Just welding and grinding and welding and grinding. But we didn't put the rear mounts on for the rear jacks. I have to clean up the powder coat and repaint, rework that, but that's welded up. That one is pretty ugly. Couldn't get a good strike on that one. And then up here, I put my chain mounts and handle, same thing. This whole front's gonna be powder coated. Grind it all down, clean it up, and then build an oven around it and powder coat it. Pretty simple, small stuff. Just tedious, bringing the metal to a close. Got 2 more of those jacks coming. I'll have to weld on the mounts for those. take them apart, powder coat the outer casing of those so they'll all match. And then I've got, oh yeah, a little late, but I went ahead and bought this Evolution dual bevel saw that works really well. I had to do some plumbing and use it for PVC and a little bit of metal, and wish I would have done that at the beginning of this whole thing. It would have come out a lot better, but live and learn is what it is. But this fender is grinded, smooth, welded, ready for powder coat. And yeah, it's just 16 gauge sheet with some 1/8 inch tube. So like everything else, it's overbuilt, supposing I put it together well enough. So we'll get that powder coated and then weld it up. I've got to finish the other fender, put the skin on it, the frame's done. And then here's the other side of the mount. And that pretty much takes care of it. Underside we won't look at. I'm still working on those a little better, but it's definitely stuck. So anyway, that's where it is now. So here's where it gets fun. In an effort to use my chop saw, my new chop saw, I decided to do some more metal work, get back into the beginning of the fab portion. Actually, I explain it in a little bit, but the platform I'd made, once I started looking at what I actually wanted to put in the box, all the stuff that I was designing in my head, I discovered I just wanted to extend the platform. So that's what I'm doing here, is using the fancy new miter saw. And this time I'm using 1/8 inch 2-inch tubing, which I should have built the whole trailer out of. That was really nice to work with, as well as tacking it with the MIG. And then I eventually will run the full welds with a 7018 stick arc welder. But that portion is how I wish I could. I would like to redo the whole trailer that way. That came out really nice. But so yeah, so here I'm just measuring the angles, doing the trig to figure out what angles to cut everything, the links, and getting that tacked together. Alright, so now we're changing things again. Start thinking more about the box I'm building on top, how it's going to be divided up, and what I want in it. Decided to add this forward platform, so I have more room inside. I've got a section in the front for a cooler. The cooler can go in the back, my slide out kitchen on the side, and yeah, just so everything fits now. I can build the walls, I can come up off of it. But as always, create my own problems by not knowing what I'm doing. Gotta learn. I spent the first part, as mentioned before, welding too much too soon, put too much heat into it, pulled the metal the wrong way, just not knowing, trying to get everything strong before I had everything cut and in place. I did kind of a section of the trailer at the time. So now this part is just tacked together for the moment. But these are pulled ever so slightly towards that weld in the center. So there's a slight bow coming across, which means I'm gonna have to figure out how to pull this section down so that it matches up. See it over there? I might have to cut out in between in here, and so it kind of sits down. I'm just going to figure out what the best route is. Get it all welded up, painted, powder coated. Still got the other fender to do over there. The trailer is not actually on the ground right now. The wheels are off. Both of them. Held up all around on the jacks. Level and pretty solid. So the fun continues. All right, so I added the new French section to lengthen it right at 11 feet. Be able to build the box, the shell the way I want to. So all welded up. Now it's time to clean it. Clean it up, powder coat a few things and prep, and then paint and be done with this metal part and move on to the wood. In the end, I used the actual heat from the arc welder to pull the metal down to where I needed it. And you can see it lined up pretty well. And let's now do some final prepping for paint and powder coat on the trailer. Finally bringing this thing more closely to a close. Still have some fender work to do, but cleaning up the welds right now and grinding off the paint on that front section, which I'm going to kind of do a makeshift powder coat on the front of it in a bit. But getting this section ready for the primer and then that top coat marine paint that I put all over the trailer. And here's where it pays to be a little inventive. Because of the chains and all the use that the tongue was going to get, I knew I wanted it powder coated, but obviously I don't, maybe not obviously, but I don't have a way to powder coat that whole trailer. So I've got a propane torch going through this vent pipe into the shroud I made over that trailer tongue, and that temperature probe in the back against that MDF. So basically I heated it up and I got 400 degrees out of it, which is what you need for the powder coat. Hit it with the black powder coat and then cooked it for about an hour to make sure to set it. Now both fenders are finished, and the driver's side fender looks really nice. The other one, the passenger side, does not. But if you notice, they're black. They're powder coated. So in my backyard, I built a cement 6-foot by 2-foot chamber that I heated up the same way I did as the trailer tongue, and powder coated them. And because that one fender was just too warped on the driver's side, I didn't like the way it looked. So down the road, I'm going to hit that with Raptor liner and kind of cover up my mistakes on it. And also here now I'm welding the fenders to the trailer. I wish now that I would have made a bolt-on solution. It would have saved me some more work down the road, but this is what I went with at the time. As always, live and learn. But they came out strong and they've been working well. Here we go. Metal is pretty much done, at least fabrication. Finally, after, I don't know, 5 months or so. Redid it a few times, did a bunch of stuff wrong, had to redo a bunch of stuff. Had to learn how to do a bunch of stuff. But anyway, added that front part. We've seen all that right now. I just finished up the fenders. It is time to clean it up. Clean up all the paint and primer. And Raptor line the tops and back of the fenders. They are already powder coated underneath. Sand that down and Raptor liner on top of it, just kind of added protection since the powder coat did not come out very well on this one. I need something to cover it up. The other one came out a whole lot better, but you gotta learn on the first one. So anyway, right now it's up, wheels off the ground, and all welded up. I'm not gonna get close on this side because this is the ugly side. We'll look at the other side a little better. Once again, learned quite a bit on that one. So yeah, that's it. I tacked down the back. All the bare metal deserves some paint. Clean it up and then start building the box. So here's the stick bead going across there. The one on the front with a little better light, probably. It's okay. Had quite a bit to fill, as always, nothing lined up perfectly. Had to clean up in here. All this is powder coated. That's gonna stay powder coated. Except I'm gonna, where the welds burned through, I'll just fix that with some flat black paint. But yeah, finally about to move on. Nice. Now it's time to mask off the trailer around the fender so I can Raptor line it. Basically cover up everything, because I knew that Raptor liner was gonna basically get all over everything, but man, I really love the way it came out in the end. So yeah, so get it all masked up, get the trailer covered, and then double check how I'm supposed to spray it. I had to actually rig up a little valve for the sprayer, but it worked out really well spraying that Raptor liner. And it overall, it's pretty easy to do. You keep the pressure coming out of your compressor low. So that's the little valve. I made a valve that connects in between the handle and the hose, so I could regulate it right there at the gun, and kind of do a few tests, and then spray it out. Went really nice. And that's the finished product. That's the bad fender too. And if you look really close, you can see it. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with that stuff. And since I don't have any videos or pictures of the metal completed, here's the final product. Here's the fender after a good bit of use. I went ahead and I don't have a flashlight. I should have grabbed a light, but the inside there is also Raptor lined. And then the transition between the top side paint to the Raptor lined fender. The back of the fender and between the house and the metal is painted with the top side paint as well. I didn't want to Raptor line the back and have any debris really getting stuck in there, so now I can kind of clean it out, because there is a bit of a gap here. But yeah, so that's the way the metal came out in the end. And the tongue, this portion was all powder coated with my handle that the trailer wound up really too heavy for me to use, and the trailer mounts here, all that powder coated to this transition line right here where the paint takes over for the rest. I wanted to stop for a second because you might notice all of the paint missing right here. That's on purpose right now, because this trailer has a VIN. And I'm gonna make a little short video about how to do that in Tennessee. But yeah, so it's VIN'd, and we'll be getting registered. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and that was the end of the metal. So as I get to it, we will get to the rest of it. It moves pretty quickly after that, because I was coming up on my deadline of Thanksgiving and needing to get this thing usable so we could camp in it and have fun. And thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. And hope to see you on the next one. Thanks again.